Hey, everybody, this is your host, Jermine Alberty with the Salt Talk, and I'm so glad to be with you for another episode. I have with me in the studio my friend, colleague, producer, soul buddy, so many names. Hope Hyder is with us today for a conversation. Hello, Hope. Hello.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm great. I am so happy to be able to have this conversation with you because we've been like saying so many times we need to do this, and we finally are able to do this. So
absolutely.
I'm
happy to be here. It's a long time in the making, but it feels really good to be here. Yeah.
It really is. It really is. And I talked about soul buddy. We talked about this whole ideal of soul buddy, soul mate, these different things. And being souls and spirits that when you have this connection that like, this is my sister.
Yes.
Like that is really what it is. Like, this is my sister. Okay. And I'm looking forward, for not just this being one episode, but this being one of many episodes. But I want folks to know who you are. Because, I come with the artist that you are, the writer that you are, the motivational guru that you are, but tell the folks who you are, please.
Well, my name is Hope Hyder, and I am a person that is very much in a place of evaluating how to reemerge into this not quite post-COVID landscape, but kind of after COVID, looking at how I worked before COVID and how I worked during COVID, and looking at what is it that I'm going to bring forward from the gifts that I have to share at this time. So I'm a writer. I do work as an editor as well, working with people to produce different kinds of content. Been working in counter-violent extremism intervention and also strategy, and using my intuitive gifts to help people gain clarity and formulate their visions, and then work towards those visions coming real. And I have also a dog.
Well, what's really funny about that is I've been doing Zoom like all people have for the past 2+ going on 3 years. And we always have guest appearances by dogs, babies, spouses, partners. So I think the world has to be used now to a cat, a dog, or somebody jump into the conversation.
I'm going to try. Let me see if I can.
So what was so funny is, your dog is barking in the background. I think, isn't life just full of like those distractions?
It is.
But the reality is that we have a bunch of them. In the world that we live in, we have so many different distractions. And I think that unless we really understand that life is just full of that, it's how you respond.
Absolutely. And that's the beautiful thing about COVID, all the different ways it ushered in, I think, different types of acceptable behavior between people. And I think that we started to extend a lot more grace to each other, a lot more understanding to each other. And it made us more authentic in a way, because we were all going through this truly complex and an intense experience, but giving ourselves grace and giving each other grace, like you said, with the baby in the background, our dog barking, and still understanding that this human before me is still showing up. And they're giving the best that they have in this moment, and let me expand myself a little bit, and then everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. I love those two words, grace and being authentic, because so many times, like, people just was not their authentic self. They were just going through the motions of life. And, you would say, how are you doing? And folks would go, oh, I'm fine. And the reality was, on the inside, they may have been in great turmoil, but didn't feel the ability to be authentic enough to say, no, life is crappy right now.
Right.
And I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And then I think, and I hope that we will become a more gracious and kind society, because I think people are forgetting the shared trauma that we have. And because there's some semblance of normality that seems to be returning, that people are returning back to some of those ways that are not as gracious as people felt they needed to be.
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things, that we've talked about is trauma and some of the different things that you go through in life, and how do you rebound? How do you recover? How do you bounce back? And resiliency is not just the ability to bounce back or because I bought this little ball that when you threw it against a wall, it would basically bounce off the wall. Mm-hmm. And then one day I threw it against the wall and it just splat and nothing happened. And I was like, oh, that lost its resilience. Yeah. I think that's kind of how many of us are in life. Like we get, slammed by trauma and drama and everything. And most of the time we bounce back like, okay, I got that. But there comes a point where that bounce back ain't as quick. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so can you tell me like one of the biggest life events that you had? And I'm using the word one because there's many that we both have had.
Yes.
One of the biggest life events you've had, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah. For me, one of the most intense and deeply transformative experiences I've ever had is my father was killed when I was 5 years old. And what it taught me is how much you can continue to just move forward in life, even when something like that happens, and that the world keeps moving. Life keeps going, and it doesn't pause for you. So with that death and then other deaths that I experienced after that, I really was encountering that as a coldness. It's like, man, life is cold. It don't stop. It doesn't pause for anybody. But then later on, as I started to have just difficulty emerge, just uneasiness emerge in me. I'm like, what is this? And, praying about it, meditating about it, getting the message that you never healed from your father's death, and realizing that, that stuff doesn't disappear. Even if you don't pay attention to it, it's still alive within you and it's going to express itself. You can deal with it consciously or unconsciously, but it's never going to go away on its own. It can only be processed, and you can transform the way you relate to it. Like you said earlier, it's the way that you're relating to something versus if you can just make it disappear. That's never going to happen. But what I learned from that experience was that there's this grace again, that life doesn't stop, that it does the sun keeps rising and setting every night. Things keep happening, and there's a way in which it encourages us to keep going too. And that's what my family did after my father was killed. Like my school kept going on. I kept going to school. Like those things helped me survive. Without anyone we didn't really talk about what happened that much. I don't remember, especially at that time, counselors, anyone really understanding what childhood trauma really was. And that industry has come a long way since then. But just how life never stops. And there's something about that that's very informative in teaching us how to keep putting one foot in front of the other. The breath keeps going, the heart keeps going, the thoughts keep moving. And there's something about that that's helping us understand how to keep on going and teaching us about resilience.
Wow. Yeah. In the field that I'm in, the month of May is set aside. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. For me, every day is mental health awareness.
Yes.
Because we need to talk about health and wellness. And one of the things that you pointed out was that as a child, what we have now known as ACEs, which is adverse childhood experience, we have a whole ranking of different things that youth or children may experience and how it impacts their well-being.
Yes.
That didn't exist then. But I also think that people say things like for children and youth, they'll just grow out of it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not understanding how impactful trauma can be.
Absolutely.
And what research tells us is that the median age of onset for anxiety disorders is 7 years of age. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the median, meaning that it's 7 years below and 7 years above. So that means you can have that 4 or 5-year-old who's experienced some kind of traumatic experience that has had this adverse effect on them. And if not addressed, can carry throughout their lives if never addressed. And so my second question is, what do people misunderstand about most when it comes to loss and trauma? What are some of those misunderstandings?
There's so many misunderstandings. I think that there's a expiration date on it. Yes. But there's a time, an acceptable amount of time in which you should have already resolved it or gotten over it. I also think that often people fail to be that listening ear for someone, willing to hear what they're experiencing, and no one's maybe asking you for a solution. It might be uncomfortable to hear these things, but sometimes people just need to be asked about what their experience is and just listen to. I think that people can be more helpful by just being willing to listen than actually having any answers. I think people are afraid that they're not going to know what to say. And sometimes you don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
And then also continuing to be there 1 year after, 2 years after, 3 years after, 4 years after, 5 years after, 10 years after. There may still be a need for that process to continue, depending on what happened and depending on the person. So there's no expiration date on someone's healing process or the ways in which you can be there for them through that healing.
Yeah, I think that for the listening audience, there, to me, were three very clear takeaways. One, there is no expiration date on grief, trauma. Two, people don't always need you to try to solve what it is that they are telling you.
Yes. Yes.
And I heard you use the word solution. Like, I'm not looking for a solution. No. What I'm looking for is for you to listen and just hear me. And the fact that not just for a moment, but as long as we're in relationship with each other, I may come to you from time to time and go, I still ain't been able to get over that.
Exactly.
You know, and we don't need anybody to tell us something like, well, you know, it's going to be better by and by. Time heal all wounds. No, there are some wounds that are as sore as they were when they first happened.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think that I think for someone who's experiencing something that's deeply, affecting them, that's traumatic, they don't expect you to have an answer or solutions, because very often it's the fact that there's no solution that causes the most despair, especially if it's like the passing away of a loved one, something that cannot be reversed. There is that existential despair that comes with dealing with the fact that this is not going to change. And so just being there for someone and saying, I'm here now with you in this to the extent that I can be, that can provide some sort of comfort, even if it's 1 or 2 degrees of comfort in that moment for that person, which you never know how much of an impact that'll have, especially if they feel isolated in what they're feeling.
Yeah, and I think the thing about this thing that we call trauma, I often say trauma is like a germ. Yeah. And it's everywhere, and you never know when you're going to walk into it. Yeah. Yeah. And we've all been exposed to trauma, but didn't necessarily know it until an hour or a day or a week, sometimes a month later.
Or ever.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of a sudden you start feeling this pain in your soul, in your heart, and you're trying to figure out where it came from. Yeah. And then you begin to trace your steps and you begin to learn that, oh, it was this that caused that. Yeah. And, we all know that anybody that said that sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you, must have never, ever been cussed out, criticized, demonized, marginalized, ostracized, and every other word there is.
Ignored, rejected. I mean, I think even people being chronically ignored in their household can create a situation where they grow up with a misunderstanding about the value of their words and their voice. And they might not register that as trauma because it might not be what trauma traditionally looks like. I mean, I saw an article a couple of days ago and it said, people ask this question, does what happened to me count as trauma? Mm. Is it severe enough to be trauma? And it's really about your own life and the context of your own life and what it meant to you. Because before I was awakened, I thought that there was a hierarchy of trauma. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, someone's parent got murdered. That is more severe than someone whose parent is alive, but they're never home and they never ask them how they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
No. For that person who has a parent that travels a lot, who never wonders what they're doing and never cares, that for them might be the most traumatic thing that ever happened. And so it's having that same type of impact.
Yeah.
That's not the same kind of experience. How it's registering in their body and their mind and affecting their life experience is based on them. And it doesn't matter, to compare trauma, to weigh it, or to give it a hierarchy. Those things are popular. It's what we do with each other, but we don't need to do that when it comes to what we're experiencing. That's where listening comes in and hearing.
Yeah.
How did it impact you versus, oh, you just had a parent that criticized you? Well, I didn't have any parents. And it's like, I understand it, but it's still, a chance to just be more aware of, oh, this person has a life experience. And in their life experience, this may have registered as the most devastating thing that ever happened.
Well, yeah, and I think what's so important that I hope people understand is that we don't want to rank trauma like a Likert scale. Like, yours is a 5 and yours is a 4 and yours is just a 1, because trauma is rooted in perception.
Yes.
It's what one perceives when their life is in danger or when they feel threatened of some kind. It's really rooted in that perception. And I often tell people, like, for instance, like, if I came to your house, I would say to you, and this is probably new that you're learning, I would ask you, so what kind of dog do you have? Yeah. And then you would tell me what kind of dog you had. And I would say, so how does that dog respond to strangers? Because I know you love me, we're friends, but your dog don't have a clue who I am. How do your dog respond to strangers? How big are your dogs? Now, I'm asking all these questions. Why? Because as a kid, I was chased by a dog. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in my mind, even as an adult, I'm skeptical of dogs.
Yeah.
Now, if they little, I'm okay. But if they come to my hip, we got issues. I literally would stay outside my car and say, I'll see you when you come outside, because there are some dogs, once I get to know them, we're cool. They can sniff me and do all kind of stuff. But until I get to know that dog I'm suspect. Yeah. And so that's rooted in childhood trauma of being chased by a dog. And so it's there. Yeah. And as an adult, I have done my best to try to live in that. Yeah. But I'm going to ask those questions. So tell me.
And that's part of the skillfulness of having the beautiful opportunity to grow up.
Yeah.
Adulthood is a chance, if you make it to adulthood, to reevaluate everything you've learned, everything you've experienced, and be curious about the different ways you can relate to what's happened to you and what you've done, and to continually investigate the angles that you can encounter all those things on again and again, because that's where the freedom is.
Yeah.
Facts of it might not change, but the freedom of how you encounter it has infinite ways that it could be seen. And not to lie to yourself or be delusional or be real about what's there, but also say, what else is there?
Yeah.
You asking questions, but being willing to even enter a space with the dog shows that you've grown and changed and have some resolution and wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like
ask some questions so I can reorient myself and make sure I'm safe.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like that a lot of time, our anxiety response, which we know is to fight, flight, freeze, that response is how we deal with anxiety, which is often rooted in fear. Because, it's almost like if you've been in a car accident and you see a car driving erratic, immediately your anxiety picks up and you're like, okay, how do I defend myself against what might be coming?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that, these different life events that we experience, and I think we have to be more accepting of people when they tell us that they have had some kind of traumatic experience, and not try to talk them out of it, or try to make it as if, but you're still blessed. You're still here. Well, that could have been so worse, and that irritates me when somebody tells me what I experienced could have been so worse.
Yeah.
Because how can you put a level on what could be worse? And when I'm telling you, the loss of my mother literally has shaped my life in a way where in a moment I could just be doing fine, have a thought, and immediately become sad or feel like, ugh.
Yeah. And there's a chance to where is that? Like, even with my dad, like when I think about when was it that I first encountered the trauma? Like I've gone back in my mind, like to the moment that I can remember, like hearing. So I'm like, it was really a hearing. So I didn't see him. I didn't see his body afterwards. I never saw it again. So part of it was the disappearance, the shock of someone disappearing from the world. I didn't know that it existed. I didn't know. So like, it was the shock of just, wait a minute, what? What happens to people? Like, not knowing that, I think, was just one of the layers of total surprise. Wow. And then the other layers were people doing their best to shield my brother and I. He was 4, I was 5, but not knowing, and also they were dealing with the trauma. So you have traumatized people trying to help younger traumatized people navigate something they don't know how to navigate, and just thinking, well, if we help them feel good and stay distracted, I think it's also helping them too. So they're dealing with it, and I think that, like you said, it's not going to be that bad, or it'll be over soon. Those things help people who are listening sometimes feel better, because they don't have to deal with the uncomfortable feelings of encountering, oh, what's going to happen if I hear you talking about your mother being, passed away. Oh my God, what's going to happen to my mother? I don't think about that. It's going to be fine. At least this didn't happen. I think it's more about sometimes that person who's, in that position, not wanting to, feel uncomfortable. So.
Yeah. And this really goes back to that question about loss and trauma, because loss is not just, in this COVID-19 reality we're living in, there has been so much loss for so many people that has resulted in trauma, empty dinner tables, that disappearance.
Yes.
Disappearance.
Like going out to dinner and not thinking twice about sharing a room with other people and breathing on each other.
Yeah.
I think losing those types of things without any warning is why people are now in a hurry to rush towards a semblance of normalcy, which we'll never return to. But that's part of not being willing to grieve.
Yeah.
Not being willing to grieve the way of life that we all once lived, that because of COVID will never be the same. It doesn't mean it can't be glorious. It doesn't mean that it can't be beautiful. It just won't be what it was.
Well, like the SALT talk, SALT stands for serve, affirm, love, transform. And it's my belief that through service, affirmation, and love, we transform individuals and communities. So if you had to think about how you could be salty in this world, what would you contribute to this world? That one thing that would allow you to sprinkle your salt in this world, your flavor, flavor. Yes.
That's a great question. I think one thing that's truly important is I always encourage the people I work with, and just people in my life, to take the time to evaluate whatever it is they're looking at from different perspectives, and to experience the freedom that comes with that, to liberate yourself into that. Because in the world, sometimes we can't find the liberation that we want in certain areas. There's a lot more confines, but in your mind, there's an opportunity to actually have a certain amount of freedom when it comes to seeing yourself, seeing the people in your life, seeing what you're going through, and understanding that without the way I'm seeing this, it has nothing on it. When I first encountered this kind of idea, I remember the day idea, I was like about 15 years old. and I was looking at some catalogs for colleges at my high school. And it just hit me like, oh, nothing has any meaning. Like nothing intrinsically has any built-in meaning. We give meaning to whatever we want to give it to. We say what someone else means to us. We say what an object means to us. We can give it names, but what it means to us is up to us. And I felt very overwhelmed by that responsibility. But as an adult, I feel like that is a lot of power in that. The power that everyone has to be able to assign meaning that they want to give to things that happen to them, to the relationships they have. And I think feeling empowered enough to know that you have the right to do that too. It's not just the richest people in the world or the people that you see, authority figures that have the right to say what's beautiful, to say what's important, to say what perspectives matter. You know, part of racism and sexism, all these things continuing to proliferate in our world has to do with people just saying, you know what, okay, that's the way things are. You know, and it has to really change, you know, in your mind. So I would love for more people to understand how much right they have to define things for themselves and to be curious about how they're seeing things and challenge their own minds.
Yeah, in the interview that you did, I found these words, and I'm going to read them exactly, because I want you, as I read these words, to think about maybe what you were thinking when you said these words. I want to end this podcast with those words and what you were thinking, and how you would, if you would, modify them in any way. Mm-hmm. And so here's a statement.
Okay.
All right. So the question was summarizing in a few words the most important takeaway from your cumulative life experience. Mm. And you said the most important takeaway from my cumulative life experience so far that comes to mind in that moment is that being alive is a rare and sacred gift. Mm-hmm. And wherever you do, don't take it for granted. Whatever is obscuring this awareness within anyone points to exactly what needs to be healed within them so that clarity is restored.
Yes.
Talk to us with that statement, because to me it was just so powerful.
I stand by that statement because it's very easy to lose sight of the fact that no matter what's happening, I'm alive. If I go down a road that leads me to feeling despair or frustrated or depressed, I always see that light of I'm alive though. I want to be here. Yeah. If I was in a position where this would be taken away from me, I would want it back. So I'm here now. And that relationship, that gift, that's all we get. I mean, that is a fundamental kind of mantra I have for myself, that being alive is the prize. Yeah. That's it. And then everything else on that is just what you get to experience here. This is a vehicle. It's our partner. This body, this amazing body that we get to be in. And our souls get to travel and be in this life experience together and talk and walk and move and live. That's the journey that we all are getting to experience. And there's beauty in just being alive. Some people didn't get to be here.
Yes.
Some people weren't here for very long. I used to walk around the cemetery when I was a kid. It was one of the places I liked to go because I liked to read the headstones. Oh, that person was 1. That person was 81. That person was 15. And I always thought everyone here would want to be where I am. Walking on this earth, breathing, feeling the sun, living. You know, that simplicity, touching that and letting that be the blessing that you're aware of having makes the rest of it feel like a bonus, even when it's difficult.
Yeah, I have the gift, honor, if you would, responsibility. I get a lot of calls when people are having a loved one who's suicidal.
Yeah.
What do I do? What do I say? Can you talk to them? You know, and, you know, one of the things that I've shared with someone is simply, you're worth fighting for.
Yeah.
You know, the value of who you are, no matter what you are experiencing, you're worth fighting for. And I know sometimes people who are alive feel like life can just throw one thing at you, throw another thing at you, throw another thing at you, and you're just ready to throw the towel in, ready to throw in the sink.
Yes.
But I just want to, for everybody to know, you know, who may be listening, that you're worth fighting for.
That's right.
No matter what trauma, no matter what loss you have experienced, there are people who are out here who care about you, who love you, who you may never know or meet.
Yes.
I pray for the world and people I've never met. And what I'm grateful is that there are people at the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline that they can call 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And they can call, the number is 1-800-273-TALK, 8255.
Yeah.
And I encourage folks who listen to this podcast and like, man, that was heavy about trauma. That was heavy about loss. And I'm feeling that. And who do I talk to about that? What do I do about that? You know, it's just important to know that, once again, you're not alone, that it's okay to talk to a professional about this.
That's right.
I mean, I'm the first one to say, yes, I have spoken to a therapist. I do talk to a therapist from time to time to walk through different struggles. Yeah. And it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, like I said earlier about being willing to try on different perspectives. That's all. If someone feels bad or feels despair or feels lonely and they pick up that phone and dial that number, stepping into a new reality.
Yes.
Saying that they're worthy. Oh, let me try that mindset on for a second. I'm worthy. Even if they doubt it, even if they're not sure of it, it's still for a moment interrupting the very fast momentum of someone saying, I'm done with this. It can move so quickly. Just that moment of saying, I can pause here and look at it from here. Turn around and see something different. I think that those little moments are all it takes sometimes to intervene and to have someone shift into another trajectory, another outcome. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I think folks love the song that has these lyrics. It's been a long time coming, but a change is gonna come. And it may feel like a long time, but change can come.
That's right.
And with those words, it's been a long time coming for this podcast.
It is.
But a change is coming in the form of the Salt Talk.
Yeah, that's
and my friend, this is like one of so many conversations that we're going to have. I'm so excited you agreed to be the co-host, welcome me on this journey with this. You, my son, so many other folks are excited about the work that we're going to be doing. And so we will most definitely be back with more. So this has been Jermine Alberty with the Salt Talk and Hope Hyder. Yes.
Thank you so much. It restores my faith and gives me great peace to know that you're in the world doing what you do. And just know that there are people like you, and even like myself, that they're out here and caring and loving and giving. And that we all can be that.
Yes.
And for each other.
And you know, this is not a pun, but we're going to keep hope alive.
That's right.
We're going to keep hope alive because I think if people just know there's just one person out there, just one.
Yes.
That cares.
Yes.
And who is willing to make a difference. The world can and will be a better place.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. Listen, we could go on and on and on and on, and we will.
Yeah.
And we will.
Yeah.
All right. Once again, thanks for listening to Salt Talk. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.